And we are now live. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me again. I have the wonderful, the only bear in the world who's willing to come out of the woods, come out of hibernation, and chat with me tonight. The first time he's done so this year. Everyone, give a round of applause to Perch. Perch, thank you for joining me.
Hey, glad to be here. Hopefully, we'll have a good time chatting tonight, and it's the right way to start out the year for sure.
Yes, definitely. We're starting out with one of the two things you don't do at parties. You don't talk politics or religion. But hey, we're going to do religion and comics tonight. If you didn't, which is a interesting topic that you had broached on Twitter, and you touched upon. But it's something that it was 240 characters now, and you can do a string of tweets. But to actually, have a little bit of a dialogue, it's much easier to do it in a audio form. So people can. So one of the things, the first thing I want to start out with it is the biggest, probably the first and the biggest thing being Superman. Thinking because since his inspiration is both Samson and Moses, sent via ship from a dying world, power, strength beyond mortal men. Samson had weakness too. Instead of hair getting cut, it's kryptonite for Superman. But then we have the Christ, allegories for Supes. That's always been there, pretty much, really in the comics since what the movie. That movie, the Christopher Reeve movie, and they couldn't stop themselves from then on.
No, and comics have always been rooted there. I mean, if you expand religion out, I mean, you've got the different gods, you have the people from Norse mythology, and I mean, you have all these different elements. So religion's always been a big part of comics. I mean, in one form or another, it's how a lot of the legends became. Again, years ago, it's storytelling and comics and so all these elements have come together always. So it's very much, what got me onto the topic was there's been so much over the last 2 years about politics and comics, and politics have always been with comics, and they're always threaded there. And there's a truth to that, but religion's so much more.
Definitely, because we got Gilgamesh, like the first one of the first hero. You got Beowulf. Mm-hmm. Beowulf's more anti-hero because he didn't do heroism out of altruistic means, doing it just because of the right thing. He did it because he was basically a sellsword. Fought Grendel and all that other stuff, and dragons, and what have you. So he's kind of the John Constantine of the old timey old world heroes.
Well, sure, and I mean, so many of the stories are built around the concept of redemption and saving, and I mean, it's just these elements have always been there in story in the comics. And what was interesting for me is kind of tracking, not just the origin of the heroes, but then how comics handled religion as a topic, because it can't be easy to have these godlike characters, jumping around and powers and can do anything, can turn back time. You have these bigger than life powers. At the same time, you want to acknowledge, real life religion. And this is, Marvel trying to be the window to the door outside. How are they going to connect the two dots? Because if you really sit and think about it, it's hard. It's really, really hard to do that. I mean, when you've got characters who can, span multiple dimensions and turn back time and do anything you want, how are you going to handle, just the basic concepts of religion? And what's curious to me is people today think about things like God loves, man kills, and these kinds of storylines where you had maybe this zealot, going out in the name of religion, attacking mutants or so on. But for decades, the way religion was handled in comics was actually very, very, not tasteful, but very, very respectful, if you will. They would have characters be Catholic or Jewish or Christian or any of these things, and it was just normal. They treated them like, it wasn't a weird, awkward storyline. It was just there, and that was kind of nice to see. It feels like comics didn't have as much of angst in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s with religion like they did politics. Politics has always felt a little awkward in how they handled it. They don't want to necessarily draw on the president. They don't want to date themselves, so sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. But it's kind of this awkward handling. And but religion was just kind of threaded through comics for a long time before it became more the issue, I think, that you have today, where it's more of a talking point.
Oh, definitely, because when they would approach it. It would be very respectful, very reserved, if at all. It's, like, well, does it have value to the story? Do you have you can't well, usually when you
Mhm.
think about religion in comics, my mind goes to the X-Men, definitely with Kitty Pryde, who's Jewish, Nightcrawler Catholic, Colossus atheist, and so on and so forth. And like Wolverine to a degree, atheist, non-practicing,
Or
just an
Buddhist.
animal, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's all over the place as far as that stuff goes. And you had the Purifiers, but then you had Nightcrawler being, he looks like a demon, but he's a very respectful, very loving person. He's carefree. He's a swashbuckler, but he's all over the place. He's a very interesting character. He's a guy that could be angry at the world and bitter and hateful,
Hmm.
and he's a he has like it's the good side, like when like you can play a lot of people, the religious zealots, Reverend Strikers, the Purifiers, you put those in the very negative category as far as religious portrayals in comics. And then you have somebody like Nightcrawler, he's not preachy to people. He's not like, you need Jesus in your life, I'm praying for you, but like he would say, I'm praying for you. Like, I'm not quoting anything from a comic, but he would be the kind of person, if somebody was hurt or sick, he would actually be there, like, by their bedside. He'd watch out for them. Like, that's the character. I mean, that goes to show you, for a fictional 2D illustration, to put that much character into it, that's just great craftsman work as far as like developing a character. And how much and one of the things I mentioned on your threads
Uh-huh.
was how writers, like, when Kitty Pryde first showed up, yes, she had a necklace with a Star of David, but it seems like ever since, it's like, you have to show Kitty with the Star of David. Kitty with the Star of David. It's like, it has like, see, she's Jewish. She's Jewish. And like, it doesn't really, like, maybe around like when they do like a Christmas era time issue, something, whatever, celebrating Hanukkah, or somebody might be, you know, not ignorant or hateful about, Judaism, but like maybe not know, like maybe they're coming from a different planet or something, like they're from the Shi'ar Empire or whatever. What is
Yeah.
this? That kind of thing. And you can like be respectful about it, but it seemed more like in your face, and it's like that's
It,
how
it,
it felt a lot of the time,
it
even under
definitely
Claremont.
No, it definitely shifted. I think there was a casualness to it where it was just a thing. And somebody mentioned in the chat. I mean, you expand beyond um, Thing and Moon Knight and Daredevil, and there's tons of characters. If you look at Marvel in the '70s and '80s, and you had Peter Parker kind of wrestling with religious concepts. And there's a site out there. I don't know. I'll post it somewhere, and it kind of showed all the different characters in comics with the big two, and what religions they fell into. And you're looking at this, and there's like 100 characters there. It was very inclusive, but it's also very dated. I think somewhere kind of in the 90s, people started to shy away from those topics, and as you say, they started to become either ignored or very in your face. I mean, like I said, suddenly every time Kitty Pryde is drawn, there's a Star of David there, and it's like, hey, remember, she's Jewish, remember? And it's like, yeah, we all remember. Just let's have let's just have a story where something's going on. But it's just interesting to see the roots of religion play out, and even DC, which shied away from that stuff more than Marvel did. It was there as well. You had these concepts, and you had a very, I don't want to say, well, I would call it respectful, but not in the way most people think. It's not like they devoted whole comics to, really kind of holding up any particular religion and making a big deal out of it. It wasn't like a Saturday special. It was just life. It's the characters are wrestling with these things, and it was just life, and that was cool to see. I mean, honestly, this current decade's, I think, a lot worse in its treatment. It's now kind of all the characters have that either very much on the back burner, it comes out as a prop. That's a bit of how the Thing's wedding felt, where it's like, oh yeah, he's Jewish, so we'll have some Jewish elements to it, but you don't really thread it into the character. It's just kind of there as a prop, and that's a bit of a shame. I think the stories, it was nicer when they were very textured in that way.
Yeah, I agree, because if you're actually adding in elements, the intricate nature of a Jewish wedding compared to going to the courthouse and getting a magistrate to marry you, or a captain on a ship. It's like Captain America should have wed Alicia and Ben. That would have been kind of funny, being
Yeah.
a captain, whatever, on a helicarrier nonetheless, or something, that kind of deal. But That would be very comic booky and very fun. Still grounded to a degree, but it seems like things have kind of turned antagonistic in the previous years. But if you go back to the 40s, people, I'm one of those that anytime you try to change a character's origin, if you're gonna make it better, fine. Even still, might be a little maybe don't mess with it too much. But for Wonder Woman, I always loved her origin. Hippolyta, Queen of the Amazons, couldn't have a child. She wanted a child so bad she made it out of clay, and the gods breathed life into the Greek gods breathed life into this child, and became Diana, and then Wonder Woman, and savior of humans and gods and whatever demigods alike. Not a god, not a goddess. In the middle, she's a super a basically lesbian love child, because it was Hera in the comics that breathed life into her, and then it's like, oh no, New 52, she's just another bastard of Zeus. It's like that just took her uniqueness away.
Yeah.
But you had the way they portrayed the gods there, because in fiction, 1940s, you're not looking at the Greek gods as they're just characters. People used to sacrifice animals to these people.
Yeah.
These concepts. They would, they wouldn't. My grandparents had a clock. It had I, and instead of IV, it would have an I, because IV is would be for JU, Jupiter, which is Roman, still the Roman version of Zeus. Don't want to have that because that's disrespectful. That's like saying God's name in vain. So you have the 4 I's instead of the IV. Little lesson for you, because if you've watched Last Crusade, Jehovah starts with an I. But like these were real at one time. This is a real religion that was practiced on a regular basis. I guarantee there's some people still practicing Roman or Olympian, but to such a small degree. It's like probably smaller than people that say they're practicing Jedi. That's at this point in time, because you have to go sacrifice a goat, leave flowers, whatever. It's just too much effort. But back then, that was, you want a good crop, you better go do something for whatever, Hephaestus or something like that. You have to go sacrifice a chicken. But it was, never like, you have bad gods, you have Ares and stuff like that. But nobody wants war. So, hey, make war a bad guy. So it's one of those kind of things. But you're right. It's more, as of late, it's kind of turned into that. It's kind of turned into that kind of antagonistic. And one of the things I look at, there's a Treasury edition that DC put out back in, I think, the early 70s. It was Bible stories, but Joe Kubert, and it was Book of Genesis, and a couple other stories. I actually illustrated like tabloid size. It's like this double-page spread of the Garden of Eden with Joe Kubert, and you see Adam laying on the ground, and you see Eve rising up out of him, like showing like her, coming out of his rib. And it's an interpretation, but that right there, that was quite impressive. It's a really good book if you can come across it. It's like hard to come by because they're big and they're unwieldy, and they were $1 back then, which is like what, $7, $8, $9 now. So inflation, and those kind of things, they're hard to come by, but they're fun. But it was just like adaptation of the Bible, just like the Sergio Cirillo, the Action Bible that you find pretty much every Walmart ever. So.
No, I think that there is like we started out with, the history of a lot of these stories are very much rooted in either religion or religious mythology. And if you go to different regions of the world, you go to India, you see some of the comics out there, or parts of Europe or Japan, you see a tendency to kind of, it all roots back to whatever the cultural bias is of the region, of course, which is natural. That's one reason why, if you go to Japan, you look at a lot of manga, you see, in many ways, very limited religion. You still see the superhero origins. You see, people going to a shrine or a temple, but you see stories shying away for it directly, which is very much in line with kind of how the culture treats the religion. It's very much not in your face. Versus in the U.S., there's more. You have a couple different religions there, and so they're represented in their own ways. It's always been a part of comics. I think it's not nearly as controversial or sells the clicks like saying comics have politics, because that's the thing to do right now, because everything is about politics. But the religion question is a much more fascinating one. And I'll plug there's a couple different sites that have it. But if you want a very quick kind of table, comicbookreligion.com, somebody, I don't know who made this their lot in life, but they just put everything in there and just tracked kind of the different religions there. And as you start to look at it, you're like, wow, it is everyone. It's every character has roots somewhere. Somebody asked, what's Batman? Batman was, technically in the 70s, he was written as a lapsed Catholic. Still had that belief system. Now he's written more as an atheist, although there was this issue with Tom King did a few months ago that got a little bit of press because it said, oh, Batman's confirmed to be an atheist, which really wasn't what the comic was saying. So he's still, to me, I think he's being written in this, questioning, which I think fits the character. The character is, very confident. Batman believes in Batman. Somebody said it's true. He's the detective trying to come to the bottom of what's going on. So you see this person searching for answers, not satisfied by what they're seeing. It fits that character. I think for all the things people have commented on that Tom King's done, good and bad, the handling of his religion feels one that I would argue better than how a lot have recently, and in line certainly with the bigger history of the character.
Yeah, I think so too. Like there is something about handling a character's religion, especially somebody as vague as Batman. It's like, with the Superman and Wonder Woman, you already know where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And then Batman, it's like, it'd be kind of hard to be, it's like everything happens for a reason. Sidekick gets brutally murdered.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, your another sidekick gets shot, belly shot, paralyzed, and then stripped naked, and had photographs taken over to harass her father, who's been stripped naked by bondage S&M bondage dwarves.
Yeah,
it's like it's easy to go you go to church on Sunday or go to confession and try to you have any, when's the last time you confess? Well, all right, I'm getting up and just walk right out of the confessional.
This is definitely, I think, the challenge that, and I don't know how exactly DC and Marvel are interesting, because in Marvel you've got founding member of the Avengers as an Asgardian, is from the family of gods, but for some reason Marvel was able to kind of balance that line easier. And
I think so too. It's like, well, we are doing this on a Thursday, Thor's Day,
right.
So we are, we are, the hammer of the gods is pleased. No lightning, no thunder yet, but yeah, you're right. Like they were able to. That's what's so odd about it. It's maybe because the way Marvel approached things was, in many ways, it wasn't nuanced. It feels like a lot more clunkier than the way DC would do stuff. Like DC felt like a stamped. Like if you look at the way those little cookie cutter kind of things at Christmas time, you have like the little angel or the gingerbread man. It's like the machine stamped, pressed in the steel kind of imagery. Like when I think that, I'm like your Kurt Swans, your Murphy Andersons, so on and so forth, and the way Kirby and Ditko and Don Heck and the rest of them, it was so just clunky, and it's like this shouldn't work, but it does. Because it was these artists, because at DC, it was writer, you had the writers and you had the artists, and Marvel, it was like, we're going to have the heroes battle some other, we have to have the heroes battle somebody, and then the artists go and do all the thing visually, and then Stan Lee, and that's pretty much it for the most part, would go in and write all this extra dialogue. So it's really clunky and weird, but it works because it's visually driven, and you had these people that actually knew how to, tell a story visually. And that's why Marvel, was like hip with the kids back in the day. And you can do stories where Thor, a guy in, Thor, Iron Man, Ant-Man, Wasp, and the Hulk all battle Loki, the god of tricks and lies and everything. So it's so weird how that works, but it does. It's like making him, which in the comics he's a villain, in the movies he's pretty much an anti-hero, which is odd. And he's not a god. Him in the Marvel movies, they're aliens. They're aliens. They're not gods. They're aliens, because we don't offend people. we don't say they're gods.
Disney is fascinating. I think that moment with Thor, I recall that. Some of you may or may not know this if you've been down to Disney World in Orlando for a long time, and somebody should say if it's still happening. There was a guy, or not a guy, it was a church group, who would hire a skywriting plane every single day to fly over Disney World, over the parks, and write Jesus loves you, so that everybody in the parks could look up in the sky and see it. This happened. This is every day for 20 years. This would go on. And so Disney is, as in terms of how they handle religion, they have this very much I want to say hands-off approach, but they just don't go there. And it's interesting as you compare the comics, because I think one thing that's true about DC is DC would have things. I mean, somebody mentioned, how did Batman handle when his ward, Jason Todd died? What happened there? And the comics just kind of avoided it. They went, we're just gonna not talk about it and move on. And now he's fighting the Penguin. It's good. And Marvel tended to take that extra step of, oh, hey, here's the consequences. There's a lawsuit here or foreclosure here. You got the Fantastic Four getting kicked out of their house because explosions are going on. So Marvel tended to dive into that more. And I think because of that, it allowed them to handle a lot of religion with more nuance. You can just have a character there. The writer could do it poorly and make it clunky, but DC just never started. And so it probably was easier for them to handle. But now in today's world, you've got Disney now running Marvel, and Disney's in many cases, I think, a lot more in line with how DC behaved in the 70s and 80s of just avoiding those kinds of topics, or staying at the high level. So you got the movies, and the Asgardians are now aliens, and it's fascinating to see the switch. And I think we're in the midst of seeing Marvel flip to where you're not going to see. I'm surprised you still see Nightcrawler occasionally doing Catholic stuff. I would bet that is very close to an end. It would be interesting to see if it's handled or kind of erased in the new Age of X-Men storyline, where you've got a title kind of focused on Nightcrawler. I would just guess, and maybe I'm completely wrong with my prediction, but my guess is it's going to flip a little bit, and you're just going to see more and more alignment with the movies, and more just kind of ignoring it, and those moments will become more far and few between, which is kind of sad in a way. I liked having that complexity to the universe.
Oh, definitely. Adding character traits, not just flaws, not just like, hey, Jessica Jones, she's a drunk, don't you know? And she's into weird sexual encounters. Okay, and she's a hero to people, which is just how sickening times. I'm so old fashioned. I'm like, man, I'm really old. I'm not even 40, and I feel like 100-year-old. Like, you people died for this, and so like a drunkard being reamed in the rear could be, that kind of thing. You're a hero. What is wrong with you? You disgust me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But they'll promote that, but they won't. Well, we can't talk to religion. We could talk premarital sex and a lot of other weird kinky stuff, but we can't do religion. We better stay away from that. We might offend somebody. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I wouldn't surprise me if they actually erased that from the characters, and where the Marvel characters would bring this kind of stuff up. They'd actually, it wouldn't be, a good writer wouldn't make it ham-fisted, but it'd be, the possibility of it getting brought up. Whereas over at DC, even before, I think Swamp Thing 88, which you've been around the block a while. You've not shied away from that.
Nice way to say mold, yeah.
You when I say burn around the block, I mean the rock that you pushed and turned it into a wheel, and then you found fire. But Swamp Thing 88, for those that don't know, was a very controversial issue that was one of the first banned issues. It was basically I think it was done and solicited, and then nope, don't do it. It's not happening. And it was where Swamp Thing was traveling through time through the green, because he's elemental. And in doing so, he ends up as part of the wood of the cross that Jesus is crucified on. So he has a conversation with Jesus. So it's very much like Last Temptation of Christ. Mm-hmm. And they never did it, which is maybe good, but part of me wants to read it. I'm very curious to see how it played out. I mean, I've seen some of the scans, which are not very good quality, but they're probably photocopies from 30 years ago. But touching upon those subjects, Swamp Thing. This is same era as Sandman, early Hellblazer. They wouldn't shy away from certain stuff, but maybe it was a little too far. Maybe because Last Temptation of Christ did get them death threats. Movie theaters, there's some scary stuff. If you go back and look at some of that, everybody thinks, oh, people are crazy now. Back then, it's like you didn't have a place to vent, so these people would be bottled up and they'd be in their little shacks, like, how dare they do that to the kid? And
Well,
so they act upon it.
fortunately, in today's social media society, everybody's a lot more calmer. They talk more. You have a lot of just natural debate. You don't have people getting angry for no reason about things anymore. So the time is now for sure.
Oh, definitely. I would love to see it, but likelihood, probably not. It's like when they talked about doing those like movie scripts that never happened, like Batman Triumphant, the fourth Batman movie that what if Joel Schumacher stayed on making movies or whatever. The what if third Tim Burton movie, stuff like that with Billy D. Williams being Two-Face, which would have been interesting, but whatever. And DC, I mean, they've touched upon these things. They've touched upon with their the Vertigo line, but over like Marvel in the 70s and the 80s, I believe it was the 80s actually, they did those the Pope John Paul II, Mother Teresa comics, the little kind of the bio comics that they did of them, which is, I mean, here in the South, you don't see too many Catholics. It's usually very Protestant heavy. I grew up Southern Baptist. There's a lot of Methodists, a lot of Presbyterian, but a heavy Baptist congregation. There are some Baptists that are like, okay, indifferent towards other religions, and there's some that are not. There's they look at Catholics and other things like, how dare they? It's like they got the easy way out. They can pull some horrific stuff and go confess their sins, and they get the easy way out. They where Baptists, you listen to rock and roll, you're going to hell, which is hilarious because I had a pastor one time. He's like, "Oh, you read comics, right, Larry?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I read comics too." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. What you read?" Preacher, Lady Death. I'm like, wait, Evil Ernie. I'm like, whoa, what? What? You're reading these? I'm like, I don't even touch those comics at the time. I didn't, because I was like, oh, Preacher. I knew that was just going to go way over my head at the time. But with Vertigo, there you go. We got something like Preacher, turned into a TV series. But the comics, dealing with a child of a demon and an angel going rogue and taking residence up in a preacher, and him having the voice and all this other stuff, and God biting Jesse's eye out, stuff like that. Really bizarre stuff, and in a way, kind of much beloved. Of course, people hated on it, but it was a well-crafted comic. I think it peaked way too early, but that's my opinion. I peaked with Until the End of the World, that arc.
I agree.
And then after went downhill.
No, it didn't finish strong, but it's funny because I think that came at a time where religion and there was always religion has always been a topic that's from Hollywood's perspective is easy to mock is not exactly the word, but certainly it's like a softball throw. It's like we're going to have a religious guy and he's a pastor and he's actually killing kids in the basement, and so the detective has to come in. It's a go-to storyline. And I think comics at some point started to follow suit where it was just going to be a fun thing of like, hey, let's explore the hypocrisy of religion. And that's fine. It's a story you can do. It's less original and cool when you're on version 50 of this, where it's just, what's funny is I think I mentioned this on Twitter. It's as an artist, and I was talking to Matt Fraction a long time ago, and one of his comments was when you throw religion into a story, then you're out of ideas because as a one of these kind of hypocrisy plots, because it's just been done a lot. And as a writer, as an artist, you really want to go back to that well again and again and again. It's so tread on, and it's one of those topics that as a comic writer you tend to want to avoid because you don't want to be just doing rehashed material. But what's kind of ironic there is, and he proceeded a couple years later to do a religious storyline that was like everything else. But be that as it may, I think that's where we've kind of landed. So Preacher was doing some interesting things, and when it first came out, there was a lot of negativity to it, and same kind of thing. Fox, or well, not Fox, but there were newspapers were going in on it. That's I'm old. This thing is offensive and everything else. But then the comic came out, and the initial anger kind of died down, and it became a comic with some unique ideas. There's a vampire in there, and there's a unique twist on it, so it worked. But that's been more exception than the rule. It's the new Second Coming comic. I've seen some preview pages. I don't know. Will it land? It doesn't really feel like any of these ideas are landing anymore. It feels like they're kind of out for 6. Maybe they get to 12 issues and then they vanish, which is true of almost everything. I'm looking for the original idea, and I think a lot of readers are too. They don't really care what it is, but they want to see something new. They want to see, they want to see a unique take on things. If you're going to do a religious story where the religious pastor is crazy and a hypocrite and killing kids or whatever he's doing, what's the unique part to it? What's the thing that we haven't seen before? That's what people want now. And I mean, the crazy part is just telling a normal story of, Nightcrawler, as you said at the beginning. Nightcrawler's helping people out. He's got his priesthood. He's doing his thing. Nice, normal. The end. I mean, it's just it. Maybe you just tell a solid story, and you don't have to go through these things that everybody's gone through before. But anyway,
you don't have to have a twist. Exactly. You just go about it and have a standard story where a character happens to have a religion in his life and maybe is slightly very slightly in a visible manner religious, not like he's in a closet somewhere with his shrine or something, keeping it hidden away from the world, but where it's like he's just a decent person, or just like an average person, even though he might have a prehensile tail and fewer fingers that are much bigger than people. He's blue skin, pointy ears. And then when he blinks in and out, and the smell of brimstone, which is satanic. But hey, that's travel between dimensions. That's the dimension that has a brimstone. But
that was Claremont's original idea, was the juxtaposition of this is a demon, but he's religious and has good spirit about him, and is persecuted because of his looks, but he's kept a good cheer about it, and wants to be kind of a pirate swashbuckler, and that's great. And that was kind of the original concept. And we'll see. The solo series with Age of X-Men is coming out. I'll be curious to see how they handle it. But I would predict, if you look back in the next 5 years, they're just going to kind of erase as much of this as they can.
Probably not even mention it anymore, like the fact that he is, Catholic. He'll probably play up the swashbuckler pirate kind of deal, but that's about it. Which is a Catholic swashbuckler who teleports around, who is very cheerful, which is just bizarre. They'll probably turn him all broody or something, which is totally against the character. They've done that in the past. I remember around the Chuck Austin stuff, which was where they would try to make him the secret pope and destroy Catholicism. I'm like, oh, come on. As for one, I kind of somewhat enjoyed Chuck Austin's run, partly a tiny little sliver.
Oh no!
But that was too far. But the ones like I said, give them something new, and that just jarred there was a 2-issue series. It was a part of Nexus. Mike Baron, Steve Rude did a comic 2-part called GodCon.
Oh yeah,
and it was where on Ilum, the planet where Horatio Hellpop Nexus, who he basically gets he'll die if he doesn't go around killing killers. So that's the thing. He has these basically cosmic powers. He's like Space Ghost if Space Ghost went and murdered murderers.
Right.
And as a break it down for people. And there were the 2-issue GodCon was where on Ilum they're holding a God convention, multiple religions. This is back before people were getting stabbed in the chest for depicting Muhammad or the Charlie Hebdo stuff. So in the comic you have Jesus, Buddha, and you have Muhammad show up in the comic, and there is a dark entity, basically equivalent of Satan, the devil worshippers, because their god shows up too, and it's like killing people, and it's really horrific stuff. But the comic ends on a lighthearted note with Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha high-fiving, and you can tell it was Jesus because of the crucifixion in his hand, the stigmata, and it was you look at it sacrilegious, but I looked at it as not being too kind of it's comic book. It's a little tongue-in-cheek a little bit, but it's also like, hey, just because they're all different, we can all get along. We can try to, hey, look at these 3, they're getting along. Why can't you? And I think it's kind of but some people would take that to the extreme and possibly, try to do something to, to rectify that. But then, like you have simple stuff like the Mike Allred's Golden Plates, which is just I picked up, found it a very reasonable deal. I was excited because I was expecting something like GodCon. Instead, it's a very dry, very to the letter, basically the Book of Latter-day Saints, and it's basically the story of Mormonism. 3 issues, prestige format, and it's very, very dry. I'm a big Mike Allred fan, but it was a little too much, and I couldn't finish it. But it's but you have the extremes. You have your preachers, and you have very reverential kind of education of what Mormonism is in comic book form, which I think is very valid. It's comics, but it is a very awkward way of kind of getting somebody in, kind of educating them, or maybe I don't know who this is marketed for. If you're Mormon, you already know this. If you're not, it's like entry level was like it's like trying to have to crawl up a mile-high wall just to fall another mile. That's how it felt. But yeah, comics, how you say, have tackled it in many different ways. But yeah, it's bizarre. It's kind of bizarre in that regard.
Yeah, it's funny. I think you got a lot of people also writing, I suspect, for the outrage aspect of it. I think the new Second Coming title, the concept behind it, the pitch, it's very much designed to kind of bait Twitter and bait people. I may be completely off base, and I'm actually saying I'm breaking my own rule. I like to see things in depth before I really go comment on them. But the marketing and the way a lot of the Vertigo stuff was done in this new launch felt like it was designed to piss people off, and thus get sales from the people who are pissed off at the people who are pissed off. And that, you looked at the creators they picked and everything else, with the exception of American Carnage, which, well, even that, I felt bad because that was marketed in a very strange way. But the title itself is, pretty much a classic detective, noir type story. I'm not describing it well, but it's just a good series. But a lot of the books that are dealing with religious topics right now, they kind of come out the gate with their fists up, kind of wanting to say, "Hey, look at this crazy thing we're doing to Jesus over here. Hey, it's crazy, right?" So, he's gonna look, he's drunk over here. God, Jesus is drunk. Can you imagine it? That's kind of the pitch, and so it's going to bait, one side of the group to say, that's offensive and bad, and it's going to get the, what they're hoping is that the other group's like, well, I'm all in on that because I like to see Jesus drunk. I don't see it working well. I mean, I look at kind of the numbers. I've got 4 people, which is better than some of the other Vertigo titles launched, but 4 people wanting Second Coming #1. That's never a success. I mean, if the polls are under 15, it's not a book that's going to last past 12. General rule of thumb for me, anyway.
And this is new Vertigo too. This is not the Vertigo of old where you had books, like even the Vertigo of, let's say, your Scalped or DMZ and stuff like that. The books that had legs, or Why the Last Man. These are not those books. This is, hey, we've reconfigured things so we get a taste of any creator-owned property for the first 5 years, right to refusal. Like, what's the incentive of creators coming there instead of going to Image if your concept is good enough? It's like, that Why the Last Man wouldn't have happened at Vertigo if it wasn't for, it probably would have been better off if it had gone to Image.
Yeah, would have been
something on those lines. But yeah, it's like, you're right. I mean, this is a book that, 100,000 people. It's a bunch of church groups just got together. It's like, go ahead to read is like, it's blasphemous comic book. Oh, comic books are for the devil. I'll sign my name petition, whatever. And it's, but it's one of those, any press is good press. No, it's not. It's not, because you're not any boost of interest. It's going to fade away quick. It's going to be it's a goof. It's going to be a one-off goof. You might have, higher than average sales numbers for a book like this one. Also, this is the same guy with the, which I did feel silly about the whole, the Sky Orgy. This is the same Sky Orgy from Wonder Twins guy.
Sure.
Doing this, was it Chosen, whatever it's called. No, that's the Mark Miller book. That's the
No,
Antichrist comic,
no,
which is another one
yeah.
interesting.
No, I mean, somebody, Glenda mentioned, why market books? Why pitch books to piss people off? And I think there's a lot of different answers there. I think that it comes down to you're out of ideas, and so you want attention. And one way to get attention is you write something that's deliberately controversial. And it goes back to, I mean, the comment stuck in my head. And partially, I don't know why. I'm not the biggest Fraction fan, but that comment stuck in my head for years now. It's when you go for just sheer controversy, you've run out of ideas. You know you don't have a solid premise. You know you don't have a solid foundation. So, hey, we're going to try and get some cheap attention, see if that can leverage into something more. And I don't know where that's ever really worked. I think any title that has gotten that kind of controversy at the beginning and has worked, it had a solid foundations in the first place. And who knows, maybe Second Coming, you pick that up, it's like, oh, this has got a real good hook to it. There's an interesting story. I mean, I hope so. That would be a nice outcome. But nothing survives on controversy alone. They may get a couple issues, but it's down from there. Including some of the Vertigo books. It got lots and lots of attention. It's very, very fleeting. It's, and that's why I always on Twitter, I see people kind of going all in on, Zoe Quinn for Goddess Mode. And I'm like, if you really hate this stuff, ignore it. It's going to die naturally. You can, if you really hate it, just why give it that initial bump? You are giving it its first 2 or 3 issues bump. If you said nothing, it wouldn't even get that, because there's just not anything. There's no there. So I mean, it's a marketing campaign. It's very popular right now with politics. I mean, a lot of politics and fundraising is built on pissing people off or kind of outrage reaction type stuff. I hope that goes away soon. It would be nice. I keep gravitating back to the scenes from old Alan Moore Wolverine books where, he's fought his battle and he's gone back to the shrine and is kind of praying there or kneeling there, and he seems very peaceful. And that's what I want comics to be. It's like, let's just read our comics and just chill out, because this is nuts.
Yeah,
now,
it is.
Yeah.
And then somebody's like, you want books to do good, because that means
Sure.
people coming in, people buying books, people buying possibly other books. Shops need all the help they can get. There are things that are not that good right now.
No, it's not. And I mean, if you're going to do, I mean, if we're going to make fun of any religion, let's make fun of Scientology. We haven't done it enough. I mean, even though there's a lot of jokes out there, let's go at Scientology a little bit more. It's been, the last time people did that was I think 3D Man back in Avengers. It was a very thinly veiled, what was that religion he was into? The Troon understanding or something. And it was an analogy for Scientology. That was the funniest thing I remember seeing in years. I've gotten off track, guys.
There's also Elrond from the DeMatteis and Geffen Justice League.
You're right. That's right.
And it's like there's a panel. I think it's from I can't believe it's not the Justice League, or was it Justice League? What was it called? It was either the arc that was in JLA Classified when that was a thing, or it was I can't believe it's not the Justice League, that 6-issue mini. Mm-hmm. It was the one where it's like, oh, I used to date her. It's like, why do you even date her anymore? It's just, well, she's Jewish. I'm Catholic. It's like, it's like this little bizarre he's a robot. He's a robot helper of Maxwell Lord, which, if you read Identity Crisis, or Infinite Crisis, or lead up to that, where, they turn him into a horrific monster. He killed Blue Beetle, blew his brains out. It's like, yeah, blood and gore and comic books. Yeah. It's like Vertigo light. Like where that's what they did. I blame Didio. I can't help it. I blame Didio. It's like this. We got to make comics more mature. Yeah, let's retroactively rape Sue Dibney. Yeah, let's blow Blue Beetle's brains out. Yeah, let's do this. Let's have Wonder Woman break people's necks. And not be torn up over it. It's like, Jesus.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny how that all goes, but it also does remind me. I mean, a lot of people don't realize. I think, and I may be wrong here, but I'm fairly certain that Neil Gaiman was once Scientologist. One time.
If I'm not mistaken, allegedly he had to pay off Scientology to allow him to see his family and communicate, because he's like one of those, what they call them, suppressive persons or something.
Yeah.
And it's like you're negotiating, but I mean, it's family, but still, it's like you're negotiating with terrorists.
Yeah.
You know, these people are, the Scientology, the one alleged, I know they're very litigious. They have their own community, allegedly, in Clearwater, Florida, allegedly. But they made the U.S. government back down. They made the U.S. government back down. That's scary.
It's weird. It's I mean, I've beaten up on Scientology too much. But it is, well, whatever. I think the key with religion and where we are now is there once upon a time, and I don't mean to sound like the old guy here again, but you had a bunch of religions in comics. You had, Moon Knight hanging out with Daredevil, and there wasn't this kind of big kind of religious fight, or there wasn't this need to kind of mock each other. It was just normal life. And today it seems like a lot of the religious handling, and whether you're religious or not, and I think on Twitter, I'm not, I said this in the thread, I'm not a deeply religious guy, but I have very high respect for religion, because I go out to the world and I see, where I live, a lot of homeless people, a lot of problems. And usually many times the first people up to the plate to shelter and feed and all this are the churches around here. And you got to respect that. I think for whatever else, whether you're religious or not, you should have some respect for, for what people believe. It's not your business, it's their business. And that these institutions are trying to do something. There are definitely scandals out there, absolutely. But I think a healthy respect for what somebody else believes is just a better way to run your life. And so this kind of new mode of, let's take a religion, let's just mock it endlessly, or then the counterbalance. And then somebody said it on Twitter, and then I'm like, no, they would never do this. And then today I'm looking at some articles around Second Coming, and the comments are, well, we really want to see, a comic book making fun of Muhammad, or, let's get some comics making fun of other religions. It's like, no, let's not. Why?
You see, I was thinking the same thing. It's like, there's, I guess because, back in the day, people forget that, Protestants versus Catholics, different Protestant groups versus different Protestant groups. It's, there's always been religious warfare to a degree. I mean, the Crusades were the love of God. But there are, but for the most part, Christians have been defanged for the most part. They're like, okay, we'll pray for your soul, that kind of thing. Like that's that seems like to be the general thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, because you don't have to worry about a Christian like strapping a pipe bomb to himself and going into a market, or, usually, they used to have the abortion clinics bombings and shooting the abortion doctors and stuff like that. But for the most part, Christians are pretty tame. They're, defanged, declawed, their house cats that, that are, pretty, like I said, pretty tame. But yeah, you're right. It's like, if it ain't okay for you to do it for every religion, then you can't do it for that. Like that's, it's like either all or nothing. That's how I look at it. And because people wouldn't do it for, Islam. They wouldn't do a comic where, it's like the reincarnation of Muhammad. He's like driving around in a Toyota pickup with a 50 cal machine gun and grabbing 6-year-old girls for brides, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this because I exercise my Second Amendment rights. And I'm paranoid to begin with.
But
so yeah, it's like, hey, freedom of speech. If you don't like it, leave America. But it's I get the logic. It's like, hey, if you're going to make something fun of one thing, let's make fun of everything. And that's one way to do it. And I do agree in fairness. I think that I understand that logic, but I'd like to see us get to the point of like, hey, maybe there's some other topics. We've got a million things to talk about and read, write, create, and everything else. Maybe this is something we can retire a little bit. Maybe we can just should be.
move on. Get a new story.
Well, it should be, because like what, Chosen was one of those. It was subversive. You think, oh, it's the reincarnation of Christ, Second Coming, and it turns out he's Antichrist. It was called Chosen at first, and then it was called American Jesus, the reprints.
Yep. And
it was interesting. And I know when Mark Miller did the Ultimates, approaching way Thor, it's like, well, this is a crazy, like, the whole Ultimates too is like dealing with, this is a crazy guy who thinks he's a god. He's just a powerful mutant. and it's this, it was the deconstruction of the Ultimates team. Hank Pym's been kicked out, and he's like hooking up with 18-year-old, Valkyrie and the Defenders, and it's like growing to massive heights without wearing that leather suit that he's got to wear. That's already tailor custom made for his 60-foot frame, and it's like the deconstruction of that. But then they have to get together and wait extra 4 months for issue 13. And it was like that 7-8 page spread. I'm like, this is pointless. What is this? I waited this much for. It's like, I'm like, thank God Hitch hasn't done that for Hawkman. Yeah, because I'd lose my mind. Like, oh, sorry guys, I got to wait a couple extra months so I could do this multi-page spread that adds nothing story-wise. It's like 90s wankery. It's like, here you go, multiple MIGs.
Yeah, Hawkman has been remarkably restrained where he is. He's doing very good work, but it's not the. Hawkman's been an interesting Hitch. It's one we haven't seen in a while. It's nice. I like that he's sticking to a schedule.
And it's stripped down too. I don't know if you noticed, but he's less detailed than he was during Ultimates and Authority, which I like more. It's more comic book style art, less realistic. It's realistic, but not to the everything's got to be super detailed.
Yeah,
and it actually does deal with religion too. I mean, the whole that revelation is like this first form was. It was like, wow, that was that's Venditti and Hitch are just knocking it out of the park. I mean, that's the one book from DC I'm reading on a regular basis, and if they take that away, I'm done with DC. I don't see myself coming back to any unless something else pops up that's equally as good or better. I'm not going to bother. Because that's the best, well-drawn, well-written, great character, expanding upon the origin of Hawkman, expanding upon the character, and I mean it's weirdly moving for a comic book. I'm like, no one's reading it.
Well, it's a good title. It needs help. I mean, it's not doing the best, and I think it's curious if not to shift gears completely, but. The news with DC, which really isn't getting nearly as much play on Twitter as it needs to. The news out of DC is pretty fascinating. What's happening there with the layoffs and with some of the people that have left and kind of their statements on a new direction, which is a little bit contradictory. I mean, it was 2 years ago we had Rebirth, and we're issuing a statement saying, no, we're going to get back to the core of what superhero comics is all about. It's like, wait, what happened 2 years ago? I don't. Like,
exactly. And the worst thing about it, they'll even somebody I read in, I think it was one of the Newsarama comments, like the trinity of sin that is Didio, Lee, and Harris. One guy can't get out of the 90s, one guy ran Marvel right into the ground, and another guy hates comic books. But those are they're running DC currently. It's not too far off. But yeah, getting rid of was it Mark Chiarello?
I cannot pronounce the name, but yes, no, that's a very staggering move, and especially it's weird to see Mark laid off when you are saying you're going to get back to the basics, get back to what made you great. I mean, here's a guy who I think 25 or 27-year career. I may have it exaggerated, but it's a long career in DC, and them getting rid of him is shocking. I mean, that's a very weird statement to say, to lay him off and then say at the same time we're going to get back to our core. I have no idea what they think their core is if you're letting go of Mark. Mark was and who knows, I suspect, I will predict that if there's some noise around that, some news is going to come out of the woodwork about problematic behavior. I hope not, because I've seen the guy for, 20 years easily, and very classy guy, very nice guy, a helper. Somebody definitely who loved comics. That's a tragedy. I'm curious where he gets picked up, but I can't tell what's going on with DC right now. It's a very, very strange message that they're going out with, and I think that's one for people to watch and look at. But between that and kind of the very weird misfire of DC Black, and Vertigo is is not doing anywhere close to where they thought it would go. And Bendis, they keep giving him more and more. I think
You're gonna have
we're going to get. I mean, and I come to terms with. I mean, Bendis. I want to say for the record, Bendis is a very nice guy. I've had chats with Bendis. He's I'm not revealing anything at all, but he's been one of the people on Twitter who's connected with me, and I'm very the guy is very nice. I will give him that, and he clearly loves comics. I'm not the biggest Bendis fan, and I've been honest with that, but I appreciate the behavior. That said, no matter who it is, I think you've got a guy who's come in and he's managing Superman, and now he started the new imprint with the young superheroes, and he's got an event coming up here in the summer, very Marvel-like, which is really all about the Batman mythos. And I'm just like,
and there's Jinx World stuff.
Yeah, and the Jinx. I mean, he's touching everything. I mean, literally everything in DC right now. And I do expect there to be an announcement fairly soon that he's going to be helming the new Legion of Superheroes. And I'm like, I mean, you're all in on Bendis and Bendis's friends. And I mean, that's fine. Again, you can do whatever you want, but as a big corporation managing a giant portfolio of comics, I would never have any one person, no matter who it was, managing that much of the properties, and kind of bringing a lot of people into the culture who have no exposure to DC, and they're coming in. It's DC is. I think it's going to be a very strange next 2 years from DC, and probably not in a good way. And that hurts me a lot to say that.
Yeah, I was hoping that we get like Jonathan Hickman would jump ship and he would write Legion of Superheroes. I was just imagining that as amazing run as he had on Fantastic Four. Like, the guy gets science. He seems to love science. He loves that he was able to make East of West is an amazing comic. If nobody's reading it, you need to read it. Same thing with his Fantastic Four run.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but then Bendis doing. I was like, oh god. But DC seems, as of late, we got the Shazam book that came out in this week that was supposed to be Christmas time, so a month late. That was late. The Batwing, which people selling that for $60. Grown adults selling. Okay, whatever. It's like Wortham was right. They're making Wortham right. Pushing stuff back. Like kind of reevaluating what's a part of their little line and what isn't. Really, they should just call Batman White Knight an Elseworld comic. That's what it is. That's what it should be. Just bring back Elseworlds. You have, the hemorrhaging line that is their New Age of Heroes, which is like each issue is like, diminishing returns. Like, I've got to think at this point, the money you're putting into producing that comic, you're not getting back. It's like, nope, you got to stay the course. It'll pick up in trades and people start reading it. And it's like, you and I think UL and UL Carter in the chat and Feisty too,
mm-hmm.
Is in the chat as well.
Yep.
Y'all would know better than anybody if those titles are moving. If you're at your shops, if you've had to cut back from your initial orders and like barely keep, like maybe for pull boxes and that's about it.
Yep. No, I mean, well, and we put stuff on the shelf, but I mean, at least with me, I carry no stock. I try and sell through on everything, and that's a distinct difference from where we were 10 years ago, where you wanted to have some back stock, you wanted to have some float, but now it's you're buying everything you are ordering, you are trying to get out the door within 30 days, and that's just the world you're in now. And Feisty said, and she's absolutely correct. Delays are. This is what killed the 90s, and it's funny how there's such a nostalgic feeling about the 90s. I get it. At the same time, the 90s and just delays and multiple months between issues, and for all the love that people have for the image creators, those delays on those titles murdered those titles and the business. No comic shop 3 years after kind of Image's launch believed a single thing that would come out of Image. That's just that's just kind of where it's at. So today we've got delays. Delays are picking up. We're seeing more and more and more of them, and people point to Doomsday Clock, but that one's shielded a little bit because you got a superstar team on it, and it's a limited series, and it's something kind of unique, and it feels slightly out of continuity. So there's a somewhat of a built-in patience for it. But when you get Iron Man and Fantastic Four and some of these others, yeah, that kind of it murders the title. I think Iron Man is in an absolutely terrible spot. I mean, I was not a fan of the, not to keep using the name, but I was not a fan of the Matt Fraction run, but I would beg to have it back right now. That title sold, I want to say at least 5x what it sells now.
Wow.
Anyway, and and I, people say, oh, Dan Slott is a SJW or whatever. No, it's delays. It has nothing, anybody could be writing that title. If you have the kind of random delay and you have stories that you read in 5 minutes and they're done, I mean, it's just dead. And I'm speaking of that real quick. I'm not going on a long tangent, but for the people who are in the chat and just generally, I think I'm curious what people think. So you look at a comic, and when something comes out, you want to have a decent read to it. And what I mean by that is if you pick it up and there's some kind of interesting stuff in the title, and maybe you read through it a couple times, but you feel like when you engage with that issue, it's taking you, I don't know, however long it takes you to read a comic, more than 2 or 3 minutes, let's say. And what we're seeing is a lot more comics are somewhat skimmable, and it's not because there's more splash pages or anything else. It's just you just read through them and you're done with the comic, and you have no real desire to pick it back up and read it again, and you finish it in under 5 minutes. And that was the complaint I got with Fantastic Four #1, is that people picked it up and it didn't feel really like the characters, and it was also just over immediately. And that you see more and more of that type of storytelling. And it's just not, you can't combine that with a $4.99 price tag. You can't have something that you're in and out of in 5 minutes and paying $5 for it. It no longer feels like any kind of value. And I'm curious what people think, if they get the same kind of feel to it, or what they're seeing. But that to me is, with comics, you've got to have some substance, especially if you're going to be charging $5 an issue. You can't have this light kind of almost fast food like reading.
Yeah, that right there, like you're saying, the fast food, like it's not even a decent fast food, like you're saying, Carl's Jr. Out here, it's Hardee's. But yeah, I say Cookout because Cookout's better than both. It's I don't know if it's a big chain, but they're building one near to me. The closest one's like an hour away. I went there one time. The burger's delicious. They have milkshakes, actual milkshakes, not just ice cream with a little bit of stuff thrown in it. It was really good. But if you're going to be selling something for $5, make it feel like $5. Don't give them a dollar per minute of entertainment. That the value. It's like no wonder people are buying video games instead, or going on Steam, or just waiting for the trade if they wait at all. Like, no, it's oh wow, I'm reading this Fantastic. Okay, first issue is rough. Okay, I'll give it another shot. I've moved past that. If the first issue's bad, I'm not gonna bother with a second, because I don't got time to pay another $5 or another $4 or $3. I could, depending on the team and what potential stuff like that, I might be able to swing that. $4 or $5 for an unknown quantity that's already disappointed me once. Like, keep going back to the well. It's a lot of comic fans and people that enjoy comics and readers, customers. They're excusing the abuse. You're being abused by people, and they're excusing. Well, see, you got to stick with it for a while. It gets better. It's the comic's not always like this. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Seriously, you're making it worse, and you're just perpetuating this vicious cycle. Where the comics are selling because they're selling through it. Hopefully, selling through at the shop. But then you have people probably try to turn back around and get rid of them and move them the week later. But yeah, it's like it's sad. It's very sad.
It's too hard. I mean, and it's funny because I like what Peter's doing with Alterna. I definitely think the comics need to come down in price. But one impact I don't think a lot of people talk about, because they're like, hey, let's move it all down to $1.99. The funny thing about that is, if you did it, all the comic shops would go out of business, because they inch the price up. It's like the boiling lobster. They inch the prices up year after year after year after year, and simultaneously, people bought less and less and less. They're just on whole. There's just fewer pull boxes. People have cut back on their subs. You used to have the person who would come in and buy 60 comics, and now they're buying 20. And this doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you suddenly drop back the prices, you would be making nothing in the shop. So you've got to do two things. Yes, you should drop the prices. At the same time, you've got to get people to a place where they'll buy more issues, and just dropping the price won't do it, because now you've set the understanding within people that this comic isn't a good value. Once you have people mentally there, if they think, okay, here's this comic, I'll pick on Batman for a moment. Although Batman sells quite well, but it's a good example. If somebody thinks that Batman is not worth $3.99, then if you drop it down to $2.99, they're not going to go, oh, it's $1 less, I'll buy it now. They're going to remember that they didn't feel it was worth it, so they still won't buy it. So you have to raise the quality at the same time. In fact, in front of, you have to raise the quality right now, and then you have to have a plan to start to back down these prices, because it is too high. If you can get in and see Avengers Endgame for the same cost of a movie ticket as the current issue of Avengers, and that issue of Avengers where it was $7.99 kind of out of nowhere, for a lot of, the stores knew, but one thing the stores do poorly, and I'll admit, ours does as well, is that we don't always recognize when there's a price fluctuation in a title. So we have people coming in to get their pull box and like, what the hell? Why is my bill so high? It's like, well, we got several $7.99 issues in there because Avengers decided it's a $7.99 this month. And you're going, I get to watch the movie I've been waiting for my entire adult life for less than that. And this is a comic, kind of a filler title where we have some random subplots going on. That's just not going to work. So you've got to raise the quality. You've got to lower the price, but really you got to raise the quality. And I get the optics, the finances are all out of whack. You're paying people less. The market's making less. The comics have kind of gotten themselves trapped into this place where it's going to be extremely hard to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah, it seems like the industry, the shops in general, used to be able to eat solid foods, and then had to go to liquid diet. Now you're on a feeding tube, and it's like, well, we'll go back to liquid, so we can pull the feeding tube, but you're going to start starving to death because your body's used to that, and you're not used to chewing. Like maybe your muscles have atrophy. I don't know, that kind of thing. It feels something along those lines, and it's unfortunate because it's like you need to get the visibility. The idea of you'd have to run a concurrent line of maybe $1.99 comics, like get them out in more places, and like more common areas, and so where people could gravitate towards coming to a shop. And speaking of common places, that book, which is I have it right in front of me. Oops, sorry about that. That was, Dog Man, Brawl the Wild, Dave Pilkey.
Yep.
And creator of Captain Underpants, a book I may have heard of, but it didn't really ring anything familiar. But it was in a very visible area, book section at a Walmart, with a big old price sticker of $6.98, marked down from $9.99, which is his normal price. 200-page hardcover. Mm-hmm. Very simple comics. Nothing. It's a very simple style comic, very newspaper-like, very kid-friendly from the looks of it. They even have a faux newsprint, old comic booky pattern instead of like a standard white pattern on this glossy, kind of semi-gloss stock. It's got this almost newsprint feel to it, comic, Sunday Comics newsprint. And this is, you are right. I was a little on the fence with the whole, this is kind of the future of comics, but it's going to go one or two ways. It's going to go this Scholastic, getting kids young, and it's going to go the very nimble, independent Alterna style things. Alterna, one guy runs that. Peter's doing that all himself, which is, I can't believe it. He's Neo from the Matrix. He's starting to believe. He's doing everything himself. And it's like, if he could do this, a corporation could too. But they're so used. They're so bloated at this point. It's like, it's a perfect example. Did you ever watch Stargate SG-1?
Oh, sure.
Okay, you remember the episode with the replicators and Thor
comes
down, and it's like, we've evolved so highly we can't think in primitive terms. Like, we need your kinetic-based weapons. Like, guns to kill these replicators? Yes. So it's this. Peter is the SG-1 team, where
Yeah.
Marvel was like, yeah, they have all this technology, they have all these ships and space weapons and teleporters, but they can't defeat little replicators, and that's what Peter's doing.
Well,
And
it's,
more people.
I mean, Marvel's just like they're praying that the licensing works out. I think I think you have an interesting phenomenon that's going on. You've got, comics are rapidly becoming. This is just going to make people in the room cringe, and sorry, but comics are becoming the hot topic of the industry. Yeah, yeah. They're going to be the little niche thing in the corner. It's
They
going to be,
already are in a way. I
yeah,
mean, you
no,
go to
they are. The DM is that in a lot of ways, and as it continues, it's going to be the little hobby thing. If you've ever gone into a Target, and I think Target's a fascinating little ecosystem to see what's going on. And you have the toys area there. My girls love going and playing in the toys area. And then you have the video game area. As the girls get older, they like playing there. And then kind of hidden back behind the video game area, there's this nostalgic toys. And it's clearly aimed at older, that not millennial, a little bit, but almost older. You've got like, action figures packaged in the old 1980s packaging for Netflix shows and other things. And you've got this little kind of thing in the corner. That's where comics are going. They're going there. They're going to be the little niche, thing that
it's sad.
and
That's so true, though.
oh, it kills me. But that's where it's headed. So you've got that there. Then you've got, as long as the movies can keep cranking out, and if Disney's proven nothing, they can continue to keep licensing going. You'll have kind of the big stuff like what IDW is doing with Spider-Man, the Avengers. You'll have these kind of, doesn't really matter, continuity stories, kind of like what Archie is it has been for 40 years. There's stories out there. They don't really matter when you read them or how you read them. They're just there. I'm not talking about the new stuff, but the kind of how it's been. And then the other piece of it is, and this is just the most depressing part of the conversation so far. What Pilkey's doing, and what Raina is doing, Telmere, those titles that Scholastic's pushing and others that's where the money is. So if you're looking for the mass money, it's going to be licensed IP, toys and things, as long as that holds up. And you're going to see these aimed at a younger audience, and those, I mean, for all the battles and comics and YouTube videos and bitching and everything else that goes on with comics and what's happening here, what's happening there, the people with all the money, it's Dogman, it's Smile, those are the books that, those people are multimillionaires at this point, just raking it in. And you post on Twitter, the Dogman book has generated more profits than Marvel and DC combined.
It's not even a month old.
No, it was a month old. Hit right before Christmas and just buried everyone. And that's where it's going. And Warren, a guy I've known for a while, what's your plan if comics become that degree of niche? Get out. Again, it's sad to say. There's just, if it goes that direction, then there's not a DM world to really deal in. You're going to see a couple shops kind of transform themselves to being kind of nostalgia hubs, and a lot of
selling vinyl records, video games, Atari's, stuff like that. Hey, comic books too, and a spinner rack. Hey, ain't that cute? That kind of thing. It's oh god. See, that's what a part of me. That's what hurts. It hurts my heart.
It hurts so much. And by the way, I am begging. Please prove me wrong. I want to be wrong.
Yes, be wrong. I want to be wrong.
I'm begging you, prove me wrong. I should be proven wrong. We are living in an amazing time where the characters that we grew up with and loved and everything else are making $1 billion in the box office. So if a comic should be mass market, they absolutely should be mass market. It is one of the baffling things that simultaneously comics became niche while becoming mainstream. I mean, you can't even wrap your head around that. How does that even compute? It's weird, but here we are, and there will be books or blogs or whatever happens in the future written about how we got here. I think you definitely saw kind of you saw an industry that I think was not prepared for the attention and growth that it got. And so you had a lot of people who had hired in their friends and still treated it kind of that way. and they didn't know how to take advantage of the big ramp. And because if you go to a con and you meet a lot of these creators, writers or editors or artists, you'll find a common trait. There's a lot of people who still have kind of the attitude of, I don't know how that got here. I don't know how this got popular. I feel very gifted and thankful that I got here, but I don't know how I got here. And so you have a lot of people kind of wandering around with that kind of mentality. And those are not the best people to be equipped to really ride a giant wave to mass popularity. So they almost write down to a level, and we got to get on to something happier. Like I said.
Well, Warren said in the chat, so to tie back into religion and comics, time for a miracle. It's a Hail Mary for comics. Holy God. It's like, it's the truth though, because like and people say, like, there's people, I can't stop mentioning the death cult of comics. It's like, it's everything's doomed. I'm like leaving a sinking ship. I'm trying to get a job at. Oh, I'm an editor that's coming. I'm trying to get a job at BuzzFeed, or I'm in comics. Want to work, doing storyboards for a movie or concept designs for movies or video games. It's where that's where the money is. Private commissions as well. That's where it's like, comics are in your blood or they're not. It's like you can do both. You don't have to do 12 months of comics to prove that you love comics. But if you haven't done a comic in a year, 2, 3, because you've been working, you're telling me you couldn't find the time to even do, like, Travis Charest of all people, one of the slowest artists of all time, makes comics. Still makes comics. Space Girl, which is a great comic book, which I knew some people, they went to France, and they actually said, "Is there anything you want us to get while we're in France?" Yes, Space Girl. I don't care if it's in French. I want it. Yeah, they couldn't find it. They went to a shop, and the guy barely spoke English. And he's like, "You've been fighting the English for hundreds of years. Learn the language." Bridge a gap. But it's, there's something about comics as far as it'll never die. The industry more likely will, in a very brutal fashion, like being. But you're right. But there's hope out there. It's, you have, if more people go the route that Peter's gone with Alterna, and showing that one guy can make a difference, one guy with a vision, and the tenacity to keep it up and to run a business like a business and not like a clubhouse, and not like the He-Man Women Haters Club. Where a lot of this stuff it ends up being like, or anything where you have people that actually do love the industry and show that unconditionally so.
And I think that's the bad rap that a lot of creators get and people get kind of trashed. There are people, I can't pronounce the guy's name in all these years, but you see a lot of creators that get a lot of heat online for espousing one political belief or the other. But at their core, they do love comics. They do love the industry, and they are trying. The challenge is, I think, that you do not have enough people in the industry who know what success really looks like. And what I mean by that is, look at, I always compare back to tech. Look at the people in Silicon Valley making tech companies, making software. They go to bed at night and they dream of billions of dollars. And, whether it's Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or some of these guys, they always dreamed big. Their ceiling was really, really high. And in comics, I remember when Avengers came out and there was a lot of buzz and Marvel was really clocking and DC was like, we're coming too. They weren't, but they were there. And I talked to a bunch of other retailers. I talked to some editors. I talked to the guy in charge of digital at Marvel at the time, this guy named Ira. And the attitude was like, oh wow, this is amazing. Yeah, this is great. But they had no concept of what big was. They're just like, oh, we're gonna sell some more books this year. I'm like, how many books? It's like, I don't know, like 5% more. Like, okay, well, right there, you don't know what success looks like. Your ceiling is very small. And there's this old adage that if you have no idea what rich and successful looks like, you're never going to be rich and successful, because you don't have the dream, you don't have the goal to aspire to. And I think, again, look at comics. You've got Pilkey, you've got Tailmeyer, you have these Dogman, you have Smile, you have these books that are mass selling. And what's true about both individuals? Well, they haven't been rooted in comics history. They haven't been part of the club. They came in and their goal was, I'm going to make content and I'm going to sell it and I'm going to merchandise it and market it and sign deals and I'm going to go huge. And they have. They know their ceiling is quite high. The crazy part is if you're sitting right now on Avengers or I mean like Aquaman. Aquaman just had a huge movie. So
which is surprising, but but I don't think it doesn't translate into comic sales, and that's what's so bizarre. That, and especially with Warner Brothers, you'd think they could have. There is a movie theater when some movies that don't come to my local theater, which is extremely small. It's a small town theater. It's a 6 theater. At one time it was a three cinemas instead of 6, but the bigger one, Goldsboro, North Carolina, military town. There are before movies. One of the local comic shop actually advertises the location, shows how to get there. Come off and actually shows some, a Google image, like come down this road, come down here, or right here, big old star, that kind of thing. Come to the comic store, and they'll actually advertise. But other than that, most shops don't. I understand budgets are very, very tight, and you have to be very cautious about that. But I know Marvel doesn't really have the initiative, but DC does, as far as like giving money for advertising to shops to a degree, I believe. But correct me if I'm wrong.
They both do it in their own ways. I think, there isn't a clear strategy. It feels like somebody's kind of last second homework getting done. A lot of the marketing feels that way. It doesn't feel like anybody's really making a plan. It's just like, oh yeah, crap, we need to do something for the shop. So let's make some posters. It's like, okay. It really doesn't feel like a serious effort. And yeah, I mean, I think it's smart when shops promote the films. Most shops don't because there's this view of that's not us, that doesn't belong to us, and the publishers don't either. It's all very strange. But Aquaman has made more money as a movie than the comic will ever make. And why is that? I mean, who at DC, whether it's the editor or the writer or somebody hire Jim Lee, a Didio, who's going, hey, if this movie and this property and this character and this idea is able to make, close to $1 billion, why can't we? What the same content, same IP? Why can't we be huge? What does it take to be huge? I'm not going to be satisfied. This is, for all the knocks people give against Jim Shooter, I will say he had an attitude of, I'm never satisfied. This is never big enough. We're going bigger, bigger, bigger. And that behavior is missing today. There's not people going, let's just make it really huge. Let's tap into whatever is out there, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it's just even better, great storytelling, connecting with your audience. We're going to make a ton of money. Let's go. And that's,
you need that. You need that in the comics industry. You need people to have goalposts. Okay, you're running digital. How do you gauge sales? Okay, how much percentage do we get of that 99 cents or $1.99 or whatever? Okay, how do we get people to pick up digital, but also be interested in picking up, or digital subscription, picking up the physical, comics as well. Give them incentives. It's like, hey, you buy 3 digital books, you get 1 digital free, or something along those lines. It's all ones and zeros. They can't own it, so maybe have some incentive to pick it up more. Have potential, where, it's, I don't know, you could have some kind of a mindset, but it's like, this percentages of stuff that you don't even have, like, well, let's sell 5% more than we did last year. But the issues with big companies in general is the fact that you have executives and boards especially with Marvel, because Marvel, if not mistaken, Marvel is still run by Ike. He has the TV and comics, he has toys and shirts and stuff like that, but he doesn't have the movies. That was taken away from him. That was under Feige and Iger took that away from Promoter.
And he doesn't really have the merchandising anymore either. I mean,
okay, they took that away from him as well.
Well, yes and no. He doesn't have control, and I think in general he doesn't have much control. But anyway, keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh, what I was saying is, like, like you said, with lowering the prices, these shops are used to $3.99, $2.99, $3.99, $4.99, $5.99, and so on. and you lower the prices, hey, well, that's great for customers and it's great for shops. But then, like you said, people are used to like paying $4 a pop. It's like, well, what's wrong with this? It's like, it's, is this diseased or something? Why is it cheaper now? Why is it a bad art? There is that perception of value, and especially if they didn't. I remember picking up comics. It was like $1.50, $1.75, $1.99, $2.99, stuff like that. $2.50, $2.25, and comics. I remember paying a lot less for them. And I used to go to flea markets and pick up old Avengers comics and stuff, and and that's how we, our love for Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel. But comics in general are not some. Hey, it's like one guy running a shop. Usually, Peter's the exception.
Right.
But if you lower the prices, that means like, well, we were making this much, now we're making half as much. Why? Well, we're selling the same amount of units, but the dollar price is down.
Right.
If they were selling direct market as well, I mean, they were doing kind of subscription services. They could do it. If Peter can do it, DC could do it. Marvel could do it. Well, they could hire interns. You work in a warehouse. You ship out comics. You work your way up.
I mean, Peter's model too is that he's curated a line, and so his prices are lower, and that helps for sure. But the line is also strong, so you have a connected sense of value to cost. So that's going to function. Peter can start inching up his prices over years, of course, if he wants to, but there's not that awkwardness. I think if you're used to paying $4.99 for the X-Men, and then suddenly it's $1.99, well, yeah, first of all, you to make up that gap at the shop, you're going to have to sell double the title or more, and you won't, because the readers are trained that this is a storyline, this is the content. Maybe you pick up a couple of people. It's not like, for all the comments about cost, people come into the shop and they grumble about the cost, and they will say this $7.99 Deadpool, no thank you. But they're not looking at their pile and going, man, if this was only half as cheap, I'd buy double the comics. If it was half as cheap, they'd buy a few more comics. That's where the stores or the publishers have to inch it back. And again, they do have to think bigger. I think they have to think, how do we get, if you're in Marvel right now, at least one of your thoughts should be, how can I get customers who will buy 100% of all the comics we come out with? Literally all of them. Because I used to have pull customers that would just say, everything Marvel publishes, I want. And they would buy. I have nobody like that now. And I doubt many do. And I get also you're trying to segment different audiences, of course. But how do you dream huge like that? How do you say, you know what? We're going to put a 5-year plan in place where all of our titles are selling over 100,000 copies to the DM. I said that once to an editor who just laughed in my face. And was like, well, we're never going to have that. That's ridiculous. Nobody's shooting for that. And I thought, okay, yeah, that is ridiculous, because that's a crazy number, and imagine what that would be for the industry. But why aren't you shooting for that? You should be shooting for that. You should be shooting for double that. You should be hoping that you create such an amazing empire for yourself that you're given, massive raises, and you're sitting on top of this publishing empire that, frankly, Scholastic has now taken from you. Why don't be that person? Because I guarantee you that Pilkey and Telgemeier, they're not going to hire you. What do they need you for? They've got their own empires. So make an empire for yourself. And that means dream big, put big comics out, connect with your audience, and do the right things. And that's the sad part about where Twitter and a lot of this commentary has gone, because I think there are people out there who are, want the industry to do better, are not crazy trolls, are not making fun of people's gender, sexuality, or race, or anything else. They want the industry to do legitimately better. But the conversation has become so toxic that, any criticism, you're instantly lumped into that kind of pot. And so nobody's, other than individual efforts, other than Peter, I do think that what TKO is doing is quite interesting. They're trying something new. There are a lot of interesting efforts out there, but here, I'm looking at an iPad right now, and if you've got an Apple device, you've got Newsstand on it, and you can go there and you can subscribe to magazines and you can do other things. Where are the comics? Why aren't there comics? Who's talking to Apple to get that distribution set up? where you can order a subscription. If we want to talk about digital, why that? Why are we routing everything through Comixology, which is somewhat of an unnatural way to get comics? Why not use the storefronts to just get a subscription to X-Men and just pops in automatically right there? Why not do that? Who's pushing for that? You've got a vice president of digital that's making a six-figure paycheck. Are they pursuing that angle? Probably not. So, you know, I could go on and on and on. I think
it's a lot. Yeah. There's an echo coming through. Or, two me's. I can still hear myself. It's kind of weird.
Oh, sorry. It's not me. I promise.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Am I still there? Yeah. No, I'm not. Good. There's two of me. There's only enough room in this world for one. But it's lack of imagination across the board, creatively as well as editorially. But I really think like a lot of hope and prayer to tie it back in. Things will we can correct some things, and we can have people that taking some of these ideas and actually doing something with them. Mm-hmm. Putting getting it out there to Apple and trying to get the product out there, because it is product at the end of the day. You want to make your money back. You want to be able to fund, pay, eat as well as, fund the next project. And it may not be as big as Scholastic, or may not even be as big as, well, what have you, but you can at least try. And like the idea of giving up and giving up so easily, and what's the point? Comic books are only like Spider-Man and Batman at this point. Oh, it's like the same person, like, we're all gonna die here. It's like that person in the movie Shut Up. It's like Hudson from Aliens. It's just great now, man. What the hell are we supposed to do now?
That's right.
It's like no hope. It's like, come on, like you read all these stories about heroes saving the day and finding another way out. It's like, no, I will not give up. I'm going to, I have hope in my heart. I'm not going to allow the villain to win. I'm going to figure out a way to get around it. And then they do. And you read all these stories, now these heroic acts, and, the same kind of people that'll, watch a guy grabbing his girl and yanking her around the parking lot, and they'll say nothing and do nothing. And, comic books, all the sales, the shops are closing. Well, just let them close. They just sell Funko Pops anyway. Who cares? It's like, we don't need you. Get out. Leave. I don't need you. Leave. If you're going to be like that, what's the point of wasting my time trying to convince you otherwise? Yeah. If you're already that, kind of we're all doomed mindset, it's like you need people that actually have a little hope, a little bit of spark of imagination. It's like, you know what? We contact somebody in Apple. We get that, we get that app put in there directly. So like we can pick up whatever newspaper you want, you pick up this little media feed, and then, hey, here's some comics too. Here's Daily Fiction comics. And it's, it's native, where you could have it look great on your your iPhone, and then eventually be collected, and you could buy it, via Amazon or whatever, directly from the seller or what have you, and have it shipped to you. So you have the physical thing too, and say, hand it over. Hey, here you go. Here's a collected story. So you won't have to go through and scroll through your phone. But I mean, it seems like simple, but then it's like simple ideas are usually the most hard to get across, to certain people. So it's unfortunate.
It's tough. I mean, I picked up looking at it now. I can get, dead magazines, and if you've been following the other piece of the news, you've got a lot of news agencies that are doing layoffs. All the new digital media, it's not panning out like they thought. The VCs are getting tired of funding all this stuff. It's fine, but you've got subscriptions here that are sitting right there. And the best way, anyone will tell you, for a subscription or a that kind of business, if you can get somebody to buy into a subscription, it's just like a pull box. Even if they get tired of the comic, it will go months before they stop, because the laziness or whatever else, they'll just stop. They'll just keep going, because it's just the money out every month falls off the radar. That's why Patreon people stick around as long as they do in a lot of cases. But I go onto the shop and I see a lot of single issues, no real push for any kind of subscription. And here's Superman. I can pre-order it for the same price as a physical copy, but there's nothing special about it. There's no way to say, just save me this line, nothing. And somebody's asking about Comixology as you're answering there. The originals are a thing, but it really just feels like Amazon just trying to kind of put a little bit of their IP out, see what will stick. None of it is. Maybe they do more, but there's just it's a very frustrating time. I'm glad people are trying new things. I like what TKO is doing. I like what Peter's doing. I mean, at this point, if you're Marvel or DC, why you're not knocking on Peter's door and saying, hey, why don't you come on here as a consultant and try a little imprint with us, and we'll see if we can get a new type business model started. I mean, Jesus, why?
Well, even just learning from his example, I mean, I think Peter would be like, "Nope, I'm too busy to do that for you." Like it's like they'll look up to Peter and shout, "Save us!" and he'll say, "Holy smokes, no!"
Well, exactly. No, I think Peter's a guy, and he does good work, and I really respect what he does out there. But Peter's secret, or a lot of his secret, is just work hard. I mean, just work hard. I mean, it's not the most mystical, hardest thing in the world. It's like I'm gonna have a goal. I'm gonna set the goal, and I'm gonna work toward that goal. Not that tricky. Thank you, Linda, for stopping by. By the way, always love talking to you on Twitter. I don't know. There's so many things about comics. It's a fascinating time. I'm hating the fact that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there's going to be one of those really sad little documentaries out there where it's like, what happened to comics? And you're going to get one of those little indie films where once upon a time in the 80s, there are all these direct market shops, and they carried the torch for a generation in culture. And then these movies came out, but comics didn't sell more. In fact, they started to vanish. And you're like, this is going to be the saddest documentary. I'll be in there as like some 80-year-old guy, just kind of.
You have used archival footage of those people standing in line waiting for like Youngblood #1 signatures and stuff like that, and cut to it's like comics went from people lining up around blocks to get signatures from creators to shops being closed, and like a strip mall with this like you have like a faded. Like it's a decal of Spider-Man on the wall inside the shop, and then it looks like a war zone because there's a lot of shops in war zone like areas. And then you'd have interview with some the guy the Mile High guy. You had to close that his one of his big stores, and then and then it'd be like you have comic creators. It's like these have people say oh, it was the toxic fans, and then it was not just the toxic fans. It's like that kind of. You'd be fair about it. You'd have to, but it would be. I could just see it being, just being just downright depressing, and maybe like hopeful at the end. It'd be like it'd be more like the Cocaine Cowboys documentary. Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, this comic creator who was kicked out of the company he helped found. Did a crowdfunding book where he raised $35,000 and didn't deliver.
I'll have to do some posts. I'll do some Photoshop and make it out like I'm reviewing this documentary that doesn't exist. Because it is, you'd have John Byrne's head in a bottle or something talking about drawing comics and saying crazy racist things, and maybe Rob Liefeld sitting there with this brand new mechanical arm that he uses to draw everything. It's
no, he doesn't need mechanical arm. He sold his soul to the devil. He'll never age. He'll never die. He's like the Highlander now.
He's still the same age. Everybody else is aged, and Liefeld's just sitting there, still the same guy.
Well, just like any deal with the devil, it always comes. It's like the devil can. I want to be able to draw. All right, Rob, you're not going to draw well, but you'll still get paid money, and people will mock you, and you'll never grow a thick skin. It's like
he's such a funny guy. I think. I don't know. As all these things will pass, I think, as he said, I see the things. I used to be the diversity in comics guy. Now it's Ethan Vance guy. Or like the industry is dying. It's imploding. No, not really. It's gonna be around. It's just our expectations have grown. I think of what it could be when you see these characters flying around on the big screen, and you see all this new technology and digital and all that stuff. We all have expectations that have gotten bigger, and so for comics to kind of be at this same place and diminished, it's not dying. It's just stumbling along, and it will one day be a nice little corner in Hot Topic. And
God, gee, like, wow, that's like, that's, it's like, like depressing. It's like you putting on the Cure Joy Division. Thanks, man.
Right. No, and Twitter and with social media and all that stuff. I mean, Twitter has still got to find a viable business model. I think it's just, a couple more incidents like the high school boys outrage over the weekend, and bots. I mean, I actually think that the 2020 election, that I believe is going to be the epicenter, the mountain of insanity. And I think social media will kind of peak there and die rapidly after that. It'll become something new. We're gonna get to something new, and
we're gonna live in the private eye. The Brian K. Vaughan, Marcos Martin comic Private Eye. Exactly. We're going to live in that world where it was the internet went away because people hacked it and figured out everybody's medical records and secrets, and what your kinks and fetishes and what all your private information and thoughts and stuff you put online and leak it to the world. So they destroyed the internet. No more internet. Everything's analog now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a great comic. But that right there was serialized and then collected. And I think that right there, like, properly serialized comics on newsprint, inexpensively, because there's cheap and there's inexpensively produced product that you can get, like I said, curated by a guy with a vision that knows what hey, Peter's vision and my own may not be the same, but at least he has a vision. He has a vision that he is seeking. It doesn't have, like, same thing with, like, there's other people, but they don't have a vision. They're like, well, it looks cool. It's like, no, like, do you think this will sell? Does it have legs? Are these creators trustworthy enough to actually produce on time and not be, 5-6 months late between issues? Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing with comics. Even now, we thought we got past that. We learned from the 90s. Oh, we learned from that, but we haven't. But no. I really think we could. I think we still could. But I leave a little light of hope. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to say comics are done for. Their industry, it's a whole other story. Because I'm surprised people didn't take more of a big deal what Peter broke about the whole, Diamond actually stepping up and doing the one of their things. I guess they've had to finally go and implement it. It's like quality control. It's like what books are good enough for them to publish and what books aren't, which seems to be very. It's going to be very picky when it comes like, oh, we're not going to publish this. This looks offensive to us. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, who's reviewing it? Who gets to say what's offensive or what's their standards and what isn't? So no, it's interesting.
It's going to be. I don't want to say it's going to be okay. It's going to be different. I mean, and it's where your expectations sit. I do think that more people are going to step up. I think that it's just going to come from a different source. It's why I'm pushing people to pay attention to Pilkey and to Telgemeier and these people are figuring out a new way to enter the market, like Peter, and they're being wildly successful. I mean, Peter is wildly successful, given it's a one guy shop and he's doing this and it's kind of on his shoulders and he's curating these titles and everything else. These people are very successful what they're doing, and their business is growing. It's getting bigger month after month, and it's not because the alt-right has decided to invest in Peter, which is the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard. But it's that they figured out a way to connect to an audience, and that audience is growing. So, those people are going to continue to make it work, and the big companies are going to continue to kind of spiral into more licensing, and it's just going to grow in a different direction. So if you're an aspiring comic writer or artist or creator, or you want to put some stuff out, there was a thread that went on about, give good advice to new comic creators. And a lot of the creators gave advice and a lot of kind of standard stuff, some good, some bad, a lot self-serving. My advice is, look at what's doing really, really well. Your inspiration should be what is selling millions and millions of books. And right now, if you're not paying attention to the people in Scholastic and how they've made that deal, and how they're doing their stories and how they're marketing their stuff, you should, because those are the people who are millionaires, and you want to be a millionaire. So go that direction. Don't make young adult content. I'm just saying, Pilkey is God, I can't pronounce last names for anything, but he knows his audience. He's writing to his audience. He's not reinventing the wheel. He's very strongly connected, and he's for a long time now. He's done really, really well. And Telgemeier said there's a niche in this market for kind of young adult girls and wanting to read comics that are kind of funny but also related to current life. And I'm gonna make it feel natural but not weird. I'm not going to insert a bunch of my own kind of politics and ideas into this. I'm going to try and make it feel authentic, and it works. So, simple stories, it works. So if you're a comic creator, look at what works, copy it, put your own spin on it, go that direction. Don't try and come in and say, I'm going to make, a version of the X-Men that's sluttier. Who wouldn't want that? But still, just make comics that are going to connect with an audience, any audience, and you'll probably do okay.
That's a great. Honestly, that's great advice to end this in this episode on this little
there you go.
little show. And also one thing I'll add is people say, like, how do I break in the comics industry? If you're thinking like that, you're thinking wrongly. There's people that, they broke in. They've been working for 20 years, 30 years, 10, 15, like even slower, the lower amounts numbers. People have been working hard at it for a long time. Very rarely do you get a, Liefeld or a J. Scott Campbell where they just show up and they're hired, or not J. Scott Campbell, Joe Mad, and Humberto Ramos and stuff like that. These like very rare individuals that, they're kids, they're teenagers when they get, chosen to work on this book or that. And most people, they have to work and work and work. I mean, oh wow, you're overnight sensation. I'm like, no, I've been working. You pay attention. This person's been doing comics for 20 years, so it's you got to stick with it. If I don't make it within the first 5 years, it's not worth it. It's like, well, then leave. Then go. We don't need you. It's like, I feel like the boot camp kind of guy. It's like, ring the bell, quit.
Yep.
Just give up. It's like if you're gonna give up that quickly, then your heart's not in it. If you're trying to use comics as a stepping stone to something else, like, I have a movie script idea. If I turn it into a comic book, I could sell it easier. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. Yeah. I've seen some very sad, half-priced trade paperback shelves of like this like bad movie pitch comic book.
Yeah, you got to get in there. You got to put some work out. You got to be prepared to fight for it. I mean, I was trying to look it up. Pilkey has been out for a long time. I mean, Captain Underpants is not a new thing. And you got to be prepared. It's going to be a long run. And, but as long as you keep dreaming big and pushing very, very hard, you will do just fine. Pilkey's 52 years old, Cleveland, Ohio. At this point, probably absolutely a multimillionaire. I don't know if he's 7 or 8 figures. I would guess probably 8 at this point. The guy he's living the dream. He started a long time ago. So that's what you're in for, and have fun along the way.
Yeah, I'd like to come up with something like that. Some kind of, kid friendly, all ages, like anybody could read it. Kind of like an old school Disney, animated movie where anybody could watch it. Adult, kid, don't matter. But still have artistic credits, like, kind of like the books Rio by Doug Wildey. Maybe less violence, a little less violence. But like beautifully illustrated. But I don't know if kids would dig that. It's like they might like the simpler, styles. Like that's stuff that runs through my head. Like, what if John Buscema did a comic that was targeted towards, like Scholastic the crowd? Would that even sell? So who knows? I know they used to sell those the hardcover Marvel books, like the with the old reprints of the Ditko, the first like 4 or 5 issues of the Amazing Spider-Man. I remember seeing that one in my, like, it was either first grade or second grade or something like that. It's like a Scholastic book fair. I couldn't afford it, so I just remember I was like, I wanted it, couldn't buy it. But well,
yeah.
But with that, I guess we'll end it here. Thank you, folks, for stopping by. Wow, very active chat. Very wonderful people stop by. So if you missed the religion part, you head on back, and I think we respectfully touched upon that. And yeah, and hopefully we'll do this again soon. Until next time, folks, Larry King signing off, and Perch, thank you again.
Thank you.
Folks, have a great evening, good night, and I say good luck to you.